Hey everyone, welcome to Sideline Shenanigans. I'm your host. I have a very good person near and dear to my heart, a fellow Attica alumni, Coach Jacob Mroczkiewicz. Coach, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Absolutely. Um, let's go ahead and start with what inspired you to become a coach?
Well, I always knew that I wanted the game of football to be part of my life somehow. It means a great deal to me. And when I, started teaching or seeking teaching jobs when I was graduating from Purdue back in 2015, um, it was not an afterthought per se, but it just kind of came up in my first interview here at Delphi, which I've been at ever since. If I'd like to be a part of coaching or any type of other extracurriculars, and I said, well, actually, yes, absolutely. And I was fortunate enough to get hooked up with Josh Strasser, who was the head coach at Delphi when I first got hired, and
Mhm.
to learn under him and work with so many great people here in Carroll County that I was able to afforded me the opportunity to grow and within the profession and continue to learn every single day. So I guess I kind of lucked into it. Always good when a plan comes together, but it's I don't know I don't know how I could continue to function without the game in my life in some capacity. So I feel very fortunate to be where I am.
How would you define your coaching style in 3 words?
In 3 words,
Mm.
I'd say uh, relationships come first. I'd say. I consider myself a player's coach. My staff and I try very hard to, make our program a place where kids enjoy being and enjoy being something that they enjoy being part of. We stress, trying to train the complete athlete as a student and as a person, as a young man. Those things are all very important to my staff and myself. So I
Mm.
think that's how I would sum it up. I think, and like as a leader, coaching or otherwise, any type of leadership role, I think that it's um, much more difficult to lead people if you don't have the ability to forge a connection with them, a relationship with them, and to being able to do so in the classroom and allow that to carry over onto the football field is a pretty special thing that we get to do.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Who are your coaching role models?
Um, well, I think first and foremost, I look at the guys who I've worked with in the past or worked for, but also some of the guys that and some names that you probably encountered during your time at Attica High School as well.
Yes, sir.
I learned a lot from the coaches I was able to play for at that such a small school. Again, very fortunate. I think about guys like you know Ryan Good and Baron Schmid, whom I
Mhm.
love dearly. Those are guys that even if they didn't realize it, or maybe I haven't been able to tell them, but taught me so
Mhm.
much about not just football, but about being a man and about being a husband and a father and all these other things
Mhm.
that I hold very close to my heart. But guys that I've been able to work with as well, like I said, Josh Strasser is a dear friend of mine who I love dearly, and Doug Nelson, staff as well. It's a very close knit group that we work with up
Mhm.
here. I think that um, all those guys are.
Mhm. Um, what do you believe separates a good coaches from great ones?
Um, well, for me, it always comes back to relationships, and guys who can separate you know, the game itself from your responsibilities as a leader. Um, I think that the greatest coaches are able to, establish a culture within their program and within their building that, you know, that kind of transcends the game itself. I mean, anybody can become well versed in strategy and X's and O's and things of that nature, but something that I try to learn more about every single day, and certainly every year, you know, season to season, is, you know, how do you take steps towards manufacturing a winning culture. And it's not something that ever happens overnight, and it's still something that we're striving towards here at Delphi every day, because it's not, like I said, I don't think it's ever anything that's ever just done or completed. You know, it's a fluid kind of thing. It's a program is a living organism that continues to change and, you know, be shaped and molded and things of that nature. So again, I think it all comes back to relationships.
Yeah, definitely. How do you measure success beyond the scoreboard?
For us, I think that it's, you know, and sometimes you don't get to measure that for, you know, several years down the road. But it's, you know, are the young men that are parts of our program for 4 years or more, you know, what are they like in the community after they leave Delphi? You know, are they good professionals and husbands and fathers and just good people? You know, I think that football is a unique sport, and it's a unique experience to be part of a football program, because it's hard, it's challenging, you know, it tests people, and because of that, it's not for everybody. But I think that that's the main reason why everybody should play football when they're in school, or be part of a football program in some capacity, because it is something that will change you for the better if you you know, commit yourself to it. So for us, it's, you know, are we allowing or affording young men the opportunities to, you know, become, you know, positive members of our community or wherever they end up after they're done playing for us? So, I mean, everybody wants to measure success in wins and losses, but I think that in our profession, that's just the tip of the iceberg of what people see.
How do you approach off-season development?
Um, well, I think everybody would say, or every coach would say, that, you know, they approach the off season with a growth mindset in mind, and we're no different here at Delphi. We are constantly trying to recruit our own hallways, you know, and um, get people to commit to the process of becoming um, a Delphi Oracle, because it's not something that just happens overnight, or you just like pick up a helmet one day and say, "Oh, I'm going to do this now." You know, it's a special kind of commitment. You know, we take the off season very seriously from a strength and conditioning standpoint, um, and that's something that's not unique to here. I mean, everybody does that, but I think
Mhm.
um, trying to allow the weight room in particular to be a place where people feel welcome and a place where people want to be is the first step towards that degree of success, both on the field and off the field, like we just talked about, that, you know, everybody in the state is chasing. So it's all about trying to get people to buy in, and, you know, understanding that, like, the version of yourself that you currently are is not necessarily the person that we're trying to develop. We're trying to allow everybody the resources and opportunities necessary to be that best version of themselves. So I think you can do that in any number of programs or any number of sports, but once again, from a bias standpoint, I think that uh, doing so through being part of a football program is just different.
What advice would you give to a brand new coach?
Brand new coach, shoot, there's a lot. I think, and I'm still learning every day. I'm approaching my 6th year as the head coach at Delphi. I got the job as was very green, very naive. I was 27. Um, I think most of my growing pains came from, like, you want to lean on your staff as much as you can. The most important thing that a head coach, whether he's experienced or new, can do is build your coaching staff. The situation is not about just knowing ball or running an offense or a defense or whatever. It's about how many good people can you surround yourself with to not just lighten your load as a head coach, but to make sure that you have as many different positive influences around your young men in your program as possible. Because particularly as the head coach, like, you're not going to be able to work with every member of your team on a daily basis, so you have to have people around you that you trust. And if you have the right people around you, I think more often than not, things will start to fall the right way. Maybe not immediately, but I think the people around you are just as important as anything else.
So here at Sideline Shenanigans, we're very we're a tight knit group. I may be the only one on the show technically, but I do have other guys. So what does it, because we're all a team. So what does it mean to be part of a team at Delphi?
Well, what we try to get the young men in our program to realize is that being a part of a team is probably one of the number one skills that you can learn. To be part of a team is to put someone else above yourself, to put the common goal of the collective ahead of yourself as an individual. And that takes a while to sink in, especially for teenagers sometimes, because everyone wants the stats and they get the recruitment letters and everything else. But I think that a part of any team, not just a football program, is a very important character trait. I think learning how to do something because it helps everybody be successful rather than just yourself is important for everybody to learn, particularly young men who are eventually going to be husbands and fathers and things of that nature, where they'll have to do that on a daily basis. So I'd say that I think it goes back to training the whole athlete, like the whole person, and not just the player. So yeah, put nothing before yourself.
So here also at Sideline Shenanigans, we're also all about culture here. We're a bunch of young guys just trying to do something good, spread positivity. How would you describe the culture of Delphi athletics?
The culture is such a fluid thing, I think it ebbs and flows, it improves and it takes hits, but I think that the culture of Delphi football is a hard-nosed one. It's a tenacious one. We seldom go into Friday night as we don't look the best on paper all the time, from a size or skill standpoint. But I think that the culture that we try to establish and within our program is, that even if we are going to be an underdog, we're going to, come out swinging and be the one to throw the last punch, So I think just having that sense of tenacity about you, we try to train that way. We try to prepare that way in the off season and then the summer. And I think that we find ourselves in a lot of close games. And I think that we've won about 3/4, I think, of those one-score games in the last 5 years. I think that goes back to that ideal,
Definitely. Going back to culture, how do you personally welcome new players into your program?
I will. My staff and I welcome everybody openly. We're in a day and age where coaches are fighting more battles to keep numbers, than probably what used to be the case, whether it be through specialization or health and safety concerns or whatever the case may be. But we try to make everybody feel as welcome as possible, whether that be through developing a relationship with a kid in the hallway during the school day, to make them feel like maybe this is something that I can do. Because I mean, the nature of the sport can be intimidating to some kids, but we try really hard to make sure it's an equal opportunity thing. We treat the lead up to the season as purely a meritocracy. You get what you earn, nothing more, nothing less. And so whoever comes out, if they're going to come out and outwork their teammates, then they're going to be afforded the opportunities that they've earned. I think I don't like the word, but I think that's the fairest way that you can do such things. And I think that, it can be a double-edged sword if the expectation of one's efforts doesn't necessarily meet the reality of the situation, because sometimes kids think they're working really hard when in reality maybe that's like working hard to them, but their buddy in a grade below them is not missed a morning lift all summer and whatever. So I think that just driving that ideal home to kids, that like if whatever you want to do or want to be within the program, you can. You just have to go do it. You have to earn it.
Right. How do you get your players to buy into the team first mentality?
Well, I think that those ideals of rewarding hard work over talent goes a long way towards that, because we can say as many all the catchphrases and buzzwords and everything else until we're blue in the face, as a coaching staff. But being able to empower the kids in the program to be like the ambassadors of the culture we're trying to build is really important as well. Because something being said by one of your buddies is going to mean a lot more than me saying the same thing for the thousandth time to somebody. Or my defensive coordinator saying the same thing for the thousandth time. And that consistency is important, right? But we try to allow our particular upperclassmen to be leaders, in the sense of the culture of the program has to be fostered and shepherded by them. Otherwise, it's not going to stick.
What's the locker room like before a big game?
Before a big game, we try to keep our pregame routine or ritual or whatever as consistent as possible, because every Friday night is special. Every Friday night is sacred, not just here but everywhere you go. Like you're only afforded a guaranteed 10 Friday nights a season. We feel very deeply that we can't waste any of those opportunities, because they are so fleeting and because they are so special. So my guys, the locker room is theirs for the most part. You'll probably see a big speaker, in the locker bays, and guys coming in and out, getting taped. Lots of, and everyone handles that. I get that stress or those pressures differently. And we just kind of allow, on a Friday in particular, we allow the guys to kind of be themselves, and I think that goes back to our, to that player coach mentality. Like, I try really hard not to, force a, square peg into a round hole and make everyone act, uniformly, if that's just not their process. Now, there are expectations and standards that they have to meet, obviously, but if someone is a rah-rah guy, then we're going to allow him to rah-rah. And if someone is more secluded and wants to lock in a little bit more individually, then he's going to be afforded that opportunity as well. But once once we hit the grass, it's the standard is the standard is the standard.
Absolutely, I definitely agree. Because when I was playing, I was more locked in, focused. Like everybody's different.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Coach. Let's go ahead and take a look at the schedule here that I have pulled up. So you guys got Bent Central. They've been perennially. I don't want to. I can't really say much because, but Bent Central, big program, but they haven't had really much success in the past couple years. What do you think the key is to take the win against them?
Well, and you're right. I mean, everyone kind of ebbs and flows, and down years, up years, whatever. But we're very fortunate to have a non-conference schedule that we play up a class weeks 1 and 2. We like doing that. I think that's a good measuring stick for us before we hit our conference play. But I think going into week 1 is a unique kind of challenge because you don't know exactly how teams are adjusting year to year. I mean, you've got scrimmage film, but so often we're the same way. Like you're not going to get the whole picture from a simulated environment like a scrimmage. So
Right.
really try to go into week 1 just focusing on us. We run our base more or less throughout at least through the first quarter and then adjust from there. But we don't overlook anybody. I mean, Bent Central's gotten us a couple times the last few years ago, so that's one of the beautiful things about Friday nights is anything can happen.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Now you got Twin Lakes, you got Eastern and Greentown, you got Carroll, which Carroll's been last year. I believe they had a decent year. I'm not too sure. Tri Central, Flint Prairie, Sheridan, which they don't have Bud Wright anymore, which darn. I give all my full respect to Coach Bud Wright, legendary guy.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got Coach Findlay from Flint Central. Great coach. I enjoyed my time on having him on the podcast. And Taylor, I've never really heard of Taylor, never seen anything on him, but you never know with the sneaky small teams. You can't really. It depends, right?
Yeah, and in a team like Taylor is like those ebbs and flows that I was talking about earlier. They're on the up and up. Won a sectional title last year, which nobody saw coming. I mean, them beating Pioneer was a real shock to the system, for a lot of people in our area. So Coach Patch is doing a great job over there. And I think our kids were, fell into the trap, and that's probably my fault of overlooking them a little bit week 9 last year, and they gave us all that we wanted. I think it was 21-14 was the final. So, I mean, you can't overlook anybody, and once we hit weeks 3 through 9, when we get into Hoosier Heartland play, hopefully we've worked out some bugs, and Twin Lakes has got it rolling over there with Coach O'Shea, who we have week 2. So that'll be a really good measuring stick for us going into conference play. But I think the Hoosier Heartland Conference that we're a part of is becoming a pretty decent, pretty good football conference, which hasn't necessarily been the case all that long. But we're excited about the opportunities that are laid out before us to compete at a high level within that conference. So, but it's like you said, Carroll has been on quite the tear. I think last year was the first year that Coach Betzner hasn't won a sectional, if I remember correctly. That's a big game here. We're a 2-school county, us and Carroll. The whole county ends up showing out for it. They've had our number for the last few years, but I think our guys are definitely looking forward to the opportunity to set the record straight a little bit. And we played a real tight game last year. We had some untimely turnovers, backed up in our own territory that kind of flipped the script on that one. But that was I think 24-21 final. Went right down to the wire. There's a lot of good football over here in the state, so it's an exciting time to be a Delphi Oracle.
Absolutely, Coach. I definitely agree. All right, Coach, we're going to get into, we're going to have I'm going to ask you some questions to have the fans get to know you.
Okay.
All right. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in, for the most part, in Attica, Indiana, much like yourself.
Yes, sir.
Graduated from Attica High School in 2011. After which I was at Purdue for 4 years, studied English education, graduated in December of 2015, and I've been teaching at Delphi ever since. Growing up in a small community like Attica was special to me because small town Midwest is all I've really known, and I like I said earlier, I'm fortunate enough to find myself in a very, very similar community as an adult, so pretty special.
What sports did you play growing up?
Growing up, I played football, basketball, and baseball, like a lot of kids. Football was always my first love, my greatest love, and I think it was a good time to be in Attica when I was a kid. I think my 4th or 5th grade year was the first year that they started playing youth tackle football, in an organized fashion. The old Attica Broncos. I don't know if you're part of that or not.
I was.
There you go.
I was.
So that was fun. And I think there's a great youth baseball culture in that town as well at Happy Walter Field. And, I remember, basically every single summer of my childhood just spending the ball diamond with my friends. It's like we lived out in the country, like a lot of folks do down there. So it was always hard to, sometimes I was begging my older siblings to give me a ride to the diamond so I could just, play ball. That's all I really wanted to do.
All right. Who was your favorite coach when you were a student?
Coach that I played for?
Yeah.
I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but
you can do more than one. Okay. I don't care.
I absolutely adored Coach Good and Coach Schmid, who I mentioned earlier. And there were a lot of great dudes in that community that tried to get back to the school by being involved in scholastic athletics. I think, when I was a freshman, actually, Kevin O'Shea was the head coach at Attica, and for just a year, which was a unique kind of situation. And before he, had that historic run at Central Catholic,
right.
And I learned things playing for him as just a lowly little freshman quarterback that things and lessons that I carried with me throughout the rest of my high school career. So, I'm very fortunate, just like anybody else who's fortunate enough to play this game, to have been able to learn from great men, who did things the right way and preached ideals of toughness and resilience and grit and tenacity and all these things. So, anytime I still see these guys around every once in a while, and every time I do, it's always a pretty special thing to not just reminisce, but kind of see how things shut up. Yeah. Actually, we were able to when Coach Schmid was the head coach at Attica. Did you play for him?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so he was. I was thankful and fortunate enough to be able to host them, the Attica program, a few times up at Delphi for summer scrimmages and things.
I was there.
Were you? Oh, great.
Yeah. He was the head coach my junior and senior year.
Perfect. Yeah. And that was so cool to me. I think Coach Good came up one year when I was working for Coach Strasser as well, back a few years before that. But to be able to, you spend so much time with these guys as a player, as a kid, to be able to, share the field with them in a different capacity is really special. So, I'll never forget that because those guys meant and still mean so much to me.
Yeah, definitely. I'm always talking to Coach Schmid all the time, sending him funny memes. Love that guy to death.
Great dude.
Want to trade him for the world.
Yep.
What's your favorite post game meal?
Post game meal? Honestly, the only post game meal I usually have is, whatever, was left over at the concession stand. So, there's nothing like a lukewarm pork burger or hot dog and taken out of the, the hot case or whatever that didn't get sold. But those taste a lot better after a win, I must say.
Mm-hmm. What's the most coach thing you ever done at home?
The most coach thing?
Yeah.
Well, I have 3 young kids, right? They're 5, 3, and 1.
Right.
And whenever my son, who's 5, is goofing around, running around in the yard or whatever, I think he gets some coaching points about whatever he's doing that he never asked for. Like if you don't pick your, if you don't drive that knee when you're running, you're gonna fall down, bud.
Mm-hmm.
Like, figure it out. He doesn't. It's fun to be able to, I guess, bring some of that home with you, and there's nothing better than having your family there with you on a Friday, running out onto the field, knocking down pylons or whatever. But anytime I come home and I still have my whistle around my neck, my kids just they insist on messing with it. Their mom doesn't like that as much, but it is what it is. I try not to bring it home as much because it's a beautiful thing, and I'd never change it for the world. But everybody who coaches, who has a family, has to find that balance between how much of it do you bring home or allow to be in the home, because you're already away from folks so much. So I try to just be dad as much as I can, but
right.
It's hard sometimes.
All right, Coach, we're going to get into my favorite part of the episodes, the shenanigans, the other part of Sideline Shenanigans.
Okay.
Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
One horse-sized duck or 100
duck-sized horses.
Well, do they have to live in my house?
Yeah, why not?
Probably one horse-sized duck, because 100 duck-sized horses sounds like it'd be tough to manage. I don't think I'd keep my dogs from eating them. You know what I mean? The one big one, I guess. Yeah.
What's your spirit animal, and why is it probably a bear?
It's definitely a bear. I don't know why you said that, but you're definitely right. I don't know. I mean,
I have my sources.
Fair enough. I think my first introduction into football came from my parents, who grew up in the 80s and are diehard Chicago Bears fans, and I don't know, I think that's as much a part of my identity as anything else, so I guess I'm a Baker.
All right, are you a fan of pineapple on pizza?
Not really, but my wife is, so I eat it when I have to.
Okay. Who on your staff would survive a zombie apocalypse the longest?
My D-line coach, his name's Brandon McElrath, would definitely be he's just the most innately tough person I've ever met. He works circles around everybody I know. He's twice their age in most cases. He's a veteran. If I were to pick a winner in a fight between Coach McElrath and a Bear, I would probably pick Coach McElrath.
All right. I like that. Can you beat your players at a foot race? And you got to be honest with me here.
Some of them. Not all of them.
What player on your team has the messiest locker?
Oh, all of them. I think if I were to guess, it'd probably be my tight end. His name is Keegan. He's just all over the place all the time. And I haven't inspected his locker in a while, but I would imagine if I went down in the locker room right now, piles of clothes spilling out of it.
Okay, if you had a time machine, which game would you go back and replay? From
Game that I coached?
Huh?
A game that I coached?
Or you could, let's do both coached and played.
Huh. Well, shoot, I think I'd like to go back and replay that Delphi Carroll game from 2024 last September. I thought we had a really sound game plan. I think we got outmaneuvered by those guys a little bit in the second half, and like I said, without those untimely turnovers, I think that outcome is probably different. But again, I try not to play revisionist history with especially with the kids, because it doesn't do you any good. And oftentimes those losses are just as important learning tools as the wins are. In a lot of cases, probably more important from a growth standpoint. But yeah, as a player, testing my memory a bit. Oh shoot! I remember we lost. The last game I played was the second round of the sectional against Rockville, which doesn't exist anymore. But we jumped out to an early lead and kind of squandered it. Went stagnant offensively, and ended up losing by a couple possessions. So yeah, that'd probably be the one. I mean, anything for one more time to, suit up and get under the lights. You know what I mean?
Was that the same year that you guys beat number 2 North Vermilion first round sectionals, or were you not on that team?
No, that was after me. Now North Vermilion was a little bit. They were just on the up and up when that was back in 2010. So that was a long time ago. Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
All right. Well, Coach, I want to thank you for coming on. My name is Brian Jones. He's Coach Mroczkiewicz. Thank you for listening.